Eagles hiring Sirianni as the head coach.
I got a lot to get off my chest. Let me preface with this, big bro.
We're going here.
You can be unqualified and still succeed. The two are not mutually exclusive. You can be unqualified.
I heard it.
And still succeed.
And now I feel it.
Let's go ahead and get that out the way.
Okay.
Just because someone succeeds does not mean they were qualified to be hired. Nick Sirianni wasn't qualified to get this gig.
Ooh.
He wasn't. Let me make this clear for all of y'all. The Eagles fired Doug Peterson to hire his understudy's understudy.
All right.
The Eagles hired Doug Peterson to hire his OC's offensive coordinator. Somebody got to make that make sense for me, Marcellus.
I'm here.
I don't get this hire. Actually, I do get it. I didn't want to be honest with y'all because in playing for the Eagles, I'm not allowed to tell y'all 100% of the truth.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? When you're in the locker room, you can't say everything, but it's about time to say some things. What we know about Eagles management is this. They want to be able to control the situation. Doug Peterson is no longer the Eagles head coach, not because they struggled this year, contrary to what y'all read. He's no longer the Eagles head coach because management wanted to tell Doug Peterson who to hire and who to fire. And Doug Peterson looking at himself saying, look, I've won Super Bowls. Y'all not going to tell me what to do. But you know who Eagles management can control? They can control a coach with no head coaching experience. They can control a coach with a limited resume. They can control a coach with a minimal name. So it's not like he's coming in to call a whole bunch of shots. So when I look at it, I say this. I believe the Eagles just hired a puppet that management can control. Now, I'm not going to say a puppet can't succeed. I'm not going to say Nick Sirianni can't have success. I'm not going to say he won't have success. But just because you have success does not mean you were necessarily qualified for the job at the moment in which you were hired.
Oh, you got there. You went exactly where my notes were taking me as well. My reaction to this was somewhere between surprised and shocked. I was surprised because I looked at the qualifications and I said, that's an interesting hire when we didn't hear about him being in the front of the line for other opportunities. But it stopped short of shock because once I see offensive coordinator on your resume, you are deemed qualified because the only next step is a head coaching opportunity. Now, shame on the media, shame on us for not pumping him up based on the accolades.
What accolades?
Oh, having an offense that was 30th ranked before you got there, and then your 3 years, they're 8th ranked. That's pretty good, especially when you had a carousel of quarterbacks. We could go all the way Andrew Luck, we could go to Jacoby Brissett, then Phillip Rivers, who was broken down to the point where he was available to be there.
8th ranked based on what metrics, sir? Points?
Scoring, yeah.
I'm like, I don't see.
Go ahead. Hey, man, I know this just hit right now, and prep is different for both of us, but I'm just letting you know what the numbers say right here. All I'm saying is that's a pretty big leap. So I wasn't shocked. Second thing is, Acho, be real.
Talk to me.
Once Doug Peterson was fired, and you went to the place why he was fired,
yes, sir.
But you didn't say it with your chest because you said, I'm with the Eagles and I can't say it 100%.
Can't say everything.
I wasn't with the Eagles. I can. I don't serve two gods. I work for Fox, and guess what? I'm about to talk this talk. And
talk
speak,
that talk,
speak
bro.
for yourself. I knew that they were going to hire a coach that they wanted in part to have less power and a shorter leash. Why? Because they punked Doug Peterson. They were basically telling Doug Peterson who to hire and, more importantly, who to play. That whole carousel between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz and how that whole season played out, that wasn't all Doug Peterson's doing.
Of course not.
So when you want to call Nick a puppet, you just replaced a puppet in some respects. Hey, I know you got a Super Bowl on your resume, but still, it's how you went out, and you went out not on your own sword. So I look at this situation in short and say this. If they did that to Doug Peterson, the next best thing in terms of who's going to replace him is going to be someone with less power, shorter leash, and who was the best for Carson Wentz before? Because you got to make your money work. You got to get a return on investment.
I understand what you're saying.
Come on. I'm not saying he's better than Jalen Hurts because you know I think Jalen Hurts is better. But the point is there's still too much money invested in Carson Wentz. We need to fix Carson Wentz. So the organization says let's minimize the head coach in terms of him being involved in office politics, bringing himself upstairs all the time, trying to work with our dealings. Two, who's the best to fix Carson Wentz? Frank Reich. Damn it, we can't get Frank Reich. Who can we get? The same guy who Frank Reich has been on record saying, I think he's a brilliant offensive mind. The first thing I said to General Manager Chris Ballard was, that's the guy I need in Nick Sirianni on my staff. Same guy who's went from 30th to 8th. He's a tireless worker. He pays attention to details, dynamic coaching personality. The first hire that Frank Reich wanted was Nick. So if you look at this in totality, brother, I'm not shocked. And I'm a little surprised just because I didn't hear enough of his name, but shame on me more so than shame on Nick Sirianni.
I don't know shame on you, big dog. Well, first, let me push back on a couple things. Let me push back on a couple things.
Okay, let's go.
The first is they had the 30th ranked offense because Andrew Luck didn't play that season. We all know that.
Hey, man.
Right? Now, the next year, as I see it, they got the 10th ranked offense, followed by the 18th ranked offense, followed by this year, the 10th ranked offense. Now, again, I trust you. I trust your preparation, but the numbers I see are a little bit different, so I just got to push back on what I see. But let's get, Marcellus, to the detail that don't nobody want to talk about, and I'm going to say it. I hate in sports where we just take lazy narratives, and I'm guilty of it. Nick Saban failed in the NFL. Until I did my own research, and I was like, wait a second. Nick Saban's first year with the Dolphins, he won 9 games. The Dolphins have only seen head coaches win 9 games 4 times in their last 17 years. The next year when Saban struggled, his starting quarterback got hurt. So did he really fail? Or did I just listen to what everybody else said? Okay, why am I bringing that up? Because Frank Reich, we all say that Carson Wentz succeeded because of Frank Reich. And yes, that played a factor, but all the dudes I talked to who were on that Super Bowl roster told me Frank Reich didn't call the plays. Frank Reich would get on the headset. He would tell Doug Peterson about 3 or so plays to call in third and short or on the goal line, and Doug Peterson would call the plays.
Okay.
So was it that Frank Reich is the biggest reason for Carson Wentz's success, or was it a 27-year-old Zach Ertz, a 27-year-old Alshon Jeffrey, a 28-year-old Torrey Smith, a 24-year-old Nelson Aguilar, first-round pick who was in his best season, although he caught a lot of slack while in Philly? Was it Frank Reich? Or was it a combination of a bunch of other players in the prime of their career? Because what's frustrating me now, Marcellus, is like, wait a second, I have Frank Reich's number, so put me in the head coaching conversation. Like, just because you were associated, to a man who was associated with Carson Wentz's prime, doesn't mean that you should all of a sudden be a first candidate for a job, Sal. That's where I get lost. Like, Nick Sirianni, the only reason that we're kind of tolerating this head coaching hire is because he's associated with the man who was associated with Carson Wentz's success.
That's not it.
That's it. Then what is it?
I could break it down. First of all, let me push back on your pushback because when you push on me and I weigh more than you, I'm going to push back and it's going to hurt you. Now, points per game, year before Sirianni, 30th. Under Sirianni,
Got you.
8th.
You're going off points. Okay.
Okay. Yards per game, let's keep going. 31st to 14th, huge drop. Rushing yards per game, 22nd to 10th. These are all drastic improvements. Passing yards per game, 30th to 13th.
Brissett to Luck, though. That has to matter. That has to matter to you.
It will. Okay, so I could drop you a couple notches, but it doesn't matter. That's still a huge drop. And let's look at turnover. You're teaching a new quarterback every year the same system, but it's a different quarterback, and you're still drastically improving. Well, however you want to slice it, big dog, he had impact. Let's talk about third down percentage. Money down, 18th to 6th. 3 different quarterbacks. Let's talk about sacks. You were the worst team in terms of allowing sacks. When you left, now you're left, second fewest. Here's the thing. Let's talk about who he is, because I'm going to go to the guy who I think is going to be a Hall of Famer, and Phillip Rivers. Okay. Phillip Rivers was considered broken by many people his last year with the L.A. Chargers, correct?
Okay. Yes, sir.
23 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. Yes,
sir.
Phillip Rivers threw 20 interceptions. Yes, he did. But when you look at that, you're like, where's Phillip Rivers going to go? He lands at Indy. He lands where Nick Sirianni is. He lands where Frank Reich is. All of a sudden, Phillip Rivers goes to 24-11. A lot of people say a tremendous season by Phillip Rivers, tremendous season by the Indianapolis Colts based on all expectations. You can't just keep giving credit to individuals and not give it to the total or to the person who is in charge of the offense. And that's why I'm not shocked by Nick Sirianni's
We got to park somewhere. We got to park somewhere because I'm confused.
Let's ride first. Let's go somewhere first.
I'm confused. And I'm sure y'all at home are confused too, because how do we dictate when we give the offensive coordinator credit if he's not calling plays, and when we give the head coach credit if he is calling plays? Because we look at Doug Peterson and Frank Reich.
I know how.
And some people have said, well, you know what? Let's give Frank Reich credit even though Frank Wright wasn't calling the plays for that Eagles Super Bowl team, Doug Peterson was. Well, then we look at the Chiefs, and we don't give Eric Bieniemy any credit. We give Andy Reid all the credit because Andy Reid is the play caller, not Eric Bieniemy. But then we go,
it's how long it take you to get to where you
No, I'm not even going. That's not where I want to go.
Okay.
But then we go to the Colts.
Let's go.
And now we're going to give Nick Sirianni credit, even though Nick Sirianni's not calling the plays, but Frank Wright is. I just don't know how we're allowed to pick and choose when we want to give non-play callers credit.
Well, one, if you own a team, if you own anything in this world, as you own some things, I know your properties, your IP is out there, you can do what the hell you want to do. So let's not go into somebody else's lane and tell them what they can't do.
Talking about management. Talking about Eagles management.
I'm talking about who hired Nick Sirianni.